Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Co-Creators in Conversation interview series, where we talk with leaders who are challenging the status quo and creating economic value by caring about people. Right now, I am super excited to be speaking with Leang Chung, founder and CEO of Pelorastack. Welcome, Leang. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to chat with you and to be here and connect with your audience and be able to share a piece of my story.
I'm excited for that too, because when we talked before, you had so many pieces of your story that were really relatable and inspiring. So I can't wait to share more with our audience. And to get started, I was wondering if you could just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Pelorastack.
Yes. As you shared, I'm Liang. I founded and launched Pelorastack back in May 2020. So it was right during the height of the pandemic. So that was an interesting experience in and of itself.
Right.
I originally had started out the business as a content business that was focused on online courses, and the online courses were really tailored and customized to target an audience of HR professionals that were looking to upskill themselves. And since then, the business has evolved into the professional services space. And today, it sits squarely in two different areas. So on the B2B side, I provide consulting services in the HR and people operations space for early stage startups that are founded by underrepresented founders. And so I'd say my sweet spot is the folks who have less than 25 employees and are very much in need of an advisor and an expert to come in and help them evaluate their existing people operations infrastructure and identify what they need to build or create or update in order to scale.
Right.
And on the B2C side, it is career coaching that is provided to women and non-binary people who are at the mid stage of their career, preparing for what I refer to as their first time experience. And that first time experience could be, I am changing careers for the very first time. It could be I'm becoming a people manager for the very first time. I'm becoming an executive for the first time. And then more recently, it's actually helping people pivot from working for a company to actually starting their own business for the first time. So really excited to be in that space. I absolutely love my clients in all these areas, and it's been quite meaningful work for me.
That's so cool. And so awesome to hear the ways that your business has evolved, and so relatable, I think, for any visionary, whether you're starting a business or you're driving innovation within a company. You get like a vision for what you're going to do, and then you start working on it, and reality is a little different. Like, can you bring us back to that place you were at when you launched your business with your vision of creating content, and what that journey was like for you, what you experienced, what was going through your mind, when you realized that initial vision wasn't the right really path, yet there was something there for you to continue working towards?
Yeah, so I think that you're right. A lot of entrepreneurs go through that experience. And I do think in order to be successful, you do have to create space and flexibility to allow that to organically happen. So when I started out as a content business, when I look back on it, the real basis behind that was I was super passionate about designing content. I was super passionate about being able to create something and also being able to help people. So that was the core. If I boiled it down to its core component, those were the three motivations for me. And
from what I'm hearing, if I can just make sure I'm understanding correctly, what you're describing are your own kind of internal motivators. Like, you were like, these are the things that drive me, that I am passionate about, that I'm excited about, that I do well. And so like that was the initial drive. So take us a little bit further, because I think, again, that's really, worth pointing out. A lot of us take that leap because of something within us. And then as we're making strides, we start to become more and more aware of the world around us that we're we're striving to serve and their needs.
Yeah. So as that's absolutely right. I mean, it's the core of it, right? In terms of, what the motivators are. I think it's important to identify what it is and to be able to name it. And sometimes it takes a little bit of self-discovery and time to figure out what that was. And I can honestly say that I would not have been able to communicate this when I first started. It wasn't very clear to me then. It's clear to me now that I'm, looking back and reflecting on it. But that was the core fundamentals in terms of what I was chasing after. Now, when I went out to the market and I was pitching my business and I was able to generate some really great leads and I was able to generate customers, one of the things that I felt at that point was there was something that wasn't quite lining up and I couldn't really put my finger on it. Now, while I was doing all of that, I was also doing a ton of speaking engagements during that time. So I was trying to really focus on building my brand, creating brand awareness, and then also creating my own personal brand out there in the marketplace as Leang, the entrepreneur and the founder of this business. And what I discovered during that process is that there were people who connected with my story. There were people who found value in what I was sharing with them.
Right.
And they didn't work in the HR or people ops space. They worked in a number of other spaces. And they would reach out to me afterwards and say, I really loved what you shared. I really connected with your story. I really connected with you as a person. And I noticed that you work only with HR professionals. Do you ever take on clients that are outside of that space? And I tell them, I don't advertise that, but I would be happy to take you on, based on what it is that the type of coaching or the type of needs that you have. And it developed, that side of the business actually developed organically because of something that I was putting out there. And it ended up snowballing into a much larger business that now represents a bigger pie of what Pelorastack is. So I originally didn't I didn't start Pelorastack to do that. Right. It kind of found me, but that was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted, it's still touching on those core pieces I talked about in terms of wanting to design something, wanting to create something, and being able to help people. I'm still doing all those things. It just looks different today. And I think giving myself the room to play and giving myself room to adapt and to listen and to respond and react, I think allowed me to connect with this world and to connect with this type of business that I now have and the type of clients that I now have that is so meaningful to me.
And that's so awesome. And I wonder, what was it like making that shift? Because what I heard you say in the beginning was, oh, I don't advertise this. I don't, but hearing what you need and what I'm capable of, sure, I will serve you. And so it sounds like that happened a few different times. So what was it like to actually make that shift and to go from this, I don't advertise it, but it's what people are asking of me, to I'm going to actually more intentionally put this out there?
So it took me actually working with a coach myself. So I ended up working with a sales coach because that was a skill that I didn't have prior to this. And as an entrepreneur, the bulk of your time is selling, it's pitching yourself, pitching your brand, pitching. Yeah, it's a really important skill. And it's important for me as a coach, and this is something that I advise to potential clients as well, is coaching as a craft is important to continue to practice. And that is something that it's my expertise, that's my craft, and I sell this particular craft in this way. However, as a coach, I too need coaching as well. I acknowledge that. And it's important for me to work with other coaches to help develop me in other areas. And that's the reason why I sought a marketing coach, I sought a sales coach throughout this entire journey to help me with all those. And so it took me working with a sales coach, and she had me go through this whole discovery process to
Mm-hmm.
identify what my story is in terms
Mm.
of who I am as an individual. And that was a very lengthy process
Okay.
to identify what I wanted to share, and
Mm-hmm.
the underlying theme of my life that's now transcended into my professional career, that has now transcended into my business and
Right.
attracting these the clients that I ended up attracting. And that it was through that exercise and through that
Mm-hmm.
process, that's when I actually discovered my that moment, that
Mm-hmm.
epiphany or that
Mm.
discovery, where it's like, oh wait, it's around this idea, this concept around first time experiences, because I too have gone
Mm.
through so many first time experiences. And oh my God, that process was so daunting.
Right.
It was such a vulnerable process, and there was so much trial and error through that. And if I can help alleviate that for other people who are going through that
Right.
experience, I want to be able to be that person for them. And that's how
Yeah.
I was able to connect all those dots together.
That's so cool to hear, and I appreciate that openness around like, okay, yeah, I'm a coach and I need to be coached as well, and that's something I've seen for myself, that like that outside perspective makes a huge difference. Those gentle nudges and encouragement make a big difference. And I think even above and beyond that, there's something powerful when you invest in yourself that says, I believe I'm worthy. I believe I'm capable. Like, I believe I can do these things. That when we don't invest, at least this is what I've seen for myself in my business, like when I hold back, oh, I can't afford that right now, or I'm not going to spend that money, then there's this underlying message of I'm also not worthy, or a disbelief in what I am capable of, or what I want to accomplish. And so I wonder, just, like, how was your experience getting that outside perspective? How did that impact your just sense of self and how you viewed what you were capable of doing?
Oh, it's brought so much return in terms of the investment that was made, and in terms of time and money into that process, and
Right.
what I've been able to receive. Because uh, one of the things that I did gain, which I knew going into it, was the knowledge and expertise from
Mm-hmm.
someone who understands that domain, understands that particular area that I felt was lacking in me, to provide those insights and to help me understand the know-how of
Right.
the science and the art behind doing marketing really well, doing branding really well, doing sales really well. What does that funnel look like, and what's
Mm-hmm.
happening during each stage of that funnel. It was invaluable in terms of what I gained there. The second piece is that confidence, that and touching on your point about how good it feels to be able to invest in yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm important. My
Right.
growth, and from a personal perspective and a professional perspective, is important, and I'm going to show how important it is by making the investment in myself,
Mm-hmm.
in my future, to do so. The
Right.
third thing that I gain is um, a level of authenticity with my clients.
Mm.
Because if I'm going to turn around and ask people to open up their wallets and spend money to gain my expertise in order to help them in a certain area to be more equipped, or to gain confidence, or to perform better in a certain area,
Mm-hmm.
then I just feel like it would be inauthentic for me to not do the same
Right.
myself.
Sure.
And so that, I think, also helped with my communication in terms of how I was pitching my value to other people, because I understand what it's like to be in their shoes, because I've
Right.
been there. I've been in a
Mm-hmm.
position where I felt, okay, I think I've done everything I possibly could. I think I need to turn to an expert and invest some time and money into
Mm-hmm.
their expertise in order to help me grow and get to that next stage.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is this nice balance that I've been
Right.
able to create, and this level of trust, and again, like authenticity in
Mm-hmm.
that process with my clients, that I don't think I would be able to do in a real honest way if I
Right.
hadn't invested in myself.
Yeah, I think that that makes so much sense. And just like that role too of expertise as well, that just because we might be experts in the work we do in one area doesn't mean we don't have room to develop even within that area, but also in other areas, professionally and personally. And I think that that's one of the ways that in our society we perpetuate a fixed mindset, is to view someone with expertise as the know-all be-all, instead of someone with just more knowledge and experience that is also continuing to learn on their journey.
Absolutely.
Which is a lot more of a growth mindset, right?
Yeah, and I remember myself this moment where I was really, before I started Pelorastack, I wasn't on social media. I wasn't putting myself out there. I wasn't writing. I wasn't speaking. I wasn't doing anything. And I didn't have, a very strong footprint in the public setting.
Yeah.
And part of it was because I was really uncomfortable with this concept around being an expert in any space. And I remember it was quite illuminating. I was having a conversation with someone that I met on lunch club, and was networking with him, and we talked about this concept around expertise and being an expert. And I shared with him how uncomfortable I was identifying myself as an expert. And he said to me, what makes you an expert, what makes anybody an expert, is when you have knowledge and something to share about something that the person or the audience that you're speaking to does not have knowledge of,
Mm-hmm.
or does not have know-how of. And so you may not feel like you're an expert, but to them, you're now sharing information and know-how
Right.
that they don't have knowledge on. So to them, you are the expert.
Right.
And I think that was really helpful, because I built up this persona around what an expert is. Like,
Yep.
you have to be a TED Talk speaker in a certain space, and you have to have written books, on this topic.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of exaggerated
Yep.
what that term meant, and he just boiled it down into its simplest form, and that
Right.
helped me adopt that word,
Yeah.
and really embrace that word in a much larger way, because expertise is expertise, and
Right.
it doesn't have a specific look and feel to it. It comes in many different shapes and forms, and different
Totally.
stages of your life.
Very much so. Yeah, I agree. And it's just also really interesting what you're describing, that reframe that he offered you is, bringing our awareness into the things that we're unconsciously competent in can be so hard. And that's usually where we have expertise, but because we're unconsciously competent, it can be difficult to recognize that. It can be difficult to see that as being of value to other people, because it feels so easy, or feels so obvious, or doesn't even feel like effort in certain ways, because of that level of skill that we've developed over time, and effort, and training, and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to get back to one of the things you said earlier too, was that before you started your business, you had no social media presence, like really you weren't speaking, you weren't writing, no footprint in the digital realm, so to speak. So I'm super curious, what has it been like to move into that space? I assume there was a reason that you didn't really have much of a presence in social media, and now you do. So I know a lot of us, and myself included, have had some resistance, right, to putting ourselves out there on social media, and clearly you weren't doing it, and now you're embracing it. Walk us through that journey a little bit.
Yeah, it was quite scary, to be honest with you, but it felt like a necessity, because if as an entrepreneur you have no choice. I mean, it's all about putting yourself out there, and exposing your brand, exposing who you are and what you're
Right.
all about, and what it is that you're selling. And so for me, I made peace with my discomfort in that way, because I want my business to succeed. I want to perform. I want to do well. I want people to recognize who I am as an expert, in this space, and as someone who can help people in certain areas or aspects of their business or in their career. And this is the way in which the vehicle that I can use in order to do that.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah, so
curious, what was scary about it for you? Like,
I
if you
think
were to bring us into the thoughts and fears that you were like thinking at that
yeah,
time.
it's just scary. Well, number one, I have always been a pretty private person. So I wasn't even on social media from a personal perspective. I wasn't on Instagram. I wasn't on Facebook. I opened up those accounts in 2020 when and I had to
Yeah.
do it in order to to start my business account. And so
Hmm.
it just, the only real presence that I had was on LinkedIn because I was working in HR and people operations and talent for so long. But even my LinkedIn profile, I didn't have a
Mm.
profile picture for a very long time. I did not engage on that platform at all. It was just
Hmm.
simply, connecting with different people, and not even necessarily reaching out to people or doing any networking.
Right.
So it was pretty quiet. And so the switch for me, that transition was, okay, how much of myself do I feel comfortable
Mm.
revealing and talking about? Like,
Hmm.
in terms of like striking what that boundary is. I think that's
Hmm.
important because you can't go from being super private and non-existent in the digital space to just like, sharing
Right.
everything
Yeah.
and yeah, just everything about your life and your career. So I think I had to figure out, okay, how much, do I want
Hmm.
to share. And
Sure.
so I eased into the process where I first started to do speaking engagements, to
Hmm.
get myself comfortable talking to an audience and sharing my personal story. And it felt like a one-time event,
Hmm.
which made it a lot easier. It's like, okay, just psych yourself up
Right.
for this thing, and then, share this one thing that you feel comfortable with, that you feel comfortable talking about, and then that's it. Then the event is over. So I
Hmm.
think that helped me to ease into it. And then after I would speak at an event, people would then connect with me on LinkedIn and want to
Right.
share their thoughts, or what I shared, had an impact on them. And then I would, slowly start to connect with them or maybe meet with them one on one, and that built into additional conversations.
Right.
And then slowly that became, okay, well, why don't I share the events that I'm going to be speaking in, or the topics that I'm talking about, on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
on Instagram,
Right.
through my business page and my business accounts. And then that slowly started to ease me into that space. And then now I feel quite comfortable. I've been sharing personal stories and
Hmm.
very personal posts. I'm engaging with other people in terms of things that
Right.
people share that really connect with me or resonates with me, that I want to, add some additional
Hmm.
insights on, or additional thoughts on. So it was a process where I slowly eased into it, and now it's at a place where I feel quite comfortable. And
Nice.
a lot of people tell me all the time how visible I am. They say,
Nice.
we see you all the time. We don't miss you. You're there, and so you're there in the newsletter. You're there. You're in my
Right.
inbox. You're on LinkedIn. You're in Instagram. You're speaking at all these different events. So I feel like I've been able um, to accomplish what I sought
Hmm.
out to accomplish, but it's still doing it in a way which feels
Right.
really, really comfortable for myself.
Is I wonder, is there a simple way to describe the boundary? It sounds like that's what you're talking about, right? Having a boundary around what you are willing to share or put out there, and what you might maintain for your own sense of privacy. Is there a way to frame that for listeners just so they can learn from your experience?
Yeah, so most of the things that I talk about are around my personal career,
Okay.
and just the career journey itself and the career experience, whether it is in working for a company, working for a startup, or
Hmm.
working or having your own business. So that is just the overarching theme or topics that I speak to a lot. And then that cascades down to other areas, such as talking about networking, as it
Mhm.
pertains to your career, talking about communities that I belong to that helps either myself or other people in their career, and then tying in my life experiences that have influenced my career. So it's all around that same overarching theme, but it just kind of takes on different shapes and forms. And that's a space that I feel the most comfortable talking about. And it relates back to my business. It relates back to what my clients want to hear.
Mhm.
It relates back to the type of things that my prospective clients might want to see
Right.
from me. So that's the place where I have decided to like really center my
Nice.
public profile, my professional brand around.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And as you're talking about the journey too, I'm wondering, the series is called Co-Creators in Conversation. And with your own journey starting Pelorastack, like what does co-creating look like in your business? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's one of the discoveries that I had when I started Pelorastack is that I missed working on teams a lot more than I had anticipated I would. And that is something as a solopreneur, that is something that is part of the journey that you have to really embrace it, or you have to figure out a way to create that co-working experience while still being a solopreneur. And I
Mm-hmm.
decided to do both. I mean, there are certain aspects of being a solopreneur that I have fully embraced and have come to really enjoy and love, like, being in total control of my schedule and being able to take on picking and choosing the type of clients that I want to work
Right.
with, and knowing when to just say, okay, you know what, it's the end of the day. I'm going to shut my laptop down and I'm going to go for a walk or go out to dinner or just decompress and write for a little bit. And on the other hand, I have also created a really, really beautiful tapestry or network of
Mm-hmm.
other solopreneurs who feel the same way that I do. Like, we really enjoy connecting with other people. We enjoy brainstorming. We enjoy being held accountable for the things that we want to hold ourselves accountable for, but need
Yeah.
someone to tap into for that additional support. And so I now have so many people they're kind of like my colleagues and my coworkers. We're not in the same business, but
Mm-hmm.
I rely on each one of them in different ways to fill in all those different needs and gaps. And it's quite beautiful, that there's like this alternative world, right, that you
Mm.
can create where you can
Right.
still have that experience of working with other people, working on teams, but not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily having to go back to work for a company in order
Right.
to gain it, or to hire people when
Mm-hmm.
you're not yet ready for it.
Yeah, wonderful. I think that that's so brilliant. Um, and yeah, we don't need to get a job to have that sense of camaraderie. And I know that that's one of the things that can be scary for certain people to step into that space and you have a bold vision, or can feel like a reason some folks go back into work. And if you are able to, like you did, weave that tapestry together of other people on similar journeys that are there to support each other and lift each other up, it really can just make a difference. And also, I think it's like investing in a coach too, that outside perspective, somebody else's story or their viewpoint of what you're doing can be so helpful. I know in a mastermind group I'm in, that just the little observations that they've been able to make over the course of us knowing each other for 2 years can be really
Mm-hmm.
helpful and insightful, because we have that history together.
Yeah,
So, yeah, wonderful.
absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Leang, for sharing your story and telling us about, how you came into being an entrepreneur and what it's been like to grow your business. If folks listening to this episode want to reach out and connect with you and stay in touch, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast and giving me the space to share. This has been amazing. And I know
Yay.
that this is the way in which we connect with others, and also, normalize this experience that we go through. So I just really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to do so. In order
My
to connect
pleasure.
with me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there. And you can also follow Pelorastack on both LinkedIn and Instagram as well, to stay updated on the latest on what I'm doing with my business there.
Fantastic. And we'll include all of the links in the show notes for folks that want to stay in touch with you. And, want to thank our listeners as well for joining us on this journey with Leang. If there's just one thing that you heard in this conversation that's inspiring you, maybe identify one action that you could take, one thing you could experiment with doing a little bit differently in your own work, in your own business, in your own life, to apply the insights from this conversation to make progress on your own journey. So thank you again, Leang, and thank you to our listeners, and look forward to seeing you next time. If you want to get updates about future episodes, you can check us out on rosabellaconsulting.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Take care.